I want to tell you about something I noticed at Walmart last Tuesday. I was walking past the meat section, the same section I have walked past every single week for years, and I stopped. Because the price tags made me do a double take. Ground beef, chicken thighs, pork shoulder, all of them up, some of them way up. And I stood there thinking, why does nobody talk about this before it happens? Why do we always find out after the fact? That is why I am making this video today. I have been tracking grocery prices, reading USDA reports, watching trade news, and paying attention to what the people who actually work in this industry are saying. And I want to share what I found with you before July gets here. Because July is shaping up to be a turning point for a lot of the items you buy every single week. If you have never subscribed to this channel, now is a good time. Hit that button, because this is the kind of content I make. Real information, no panic, no drama, just things you actually need to know. Before we get into the full list, I want to warn you about number 7. It is not what you would expect. It is not beef. It is not coffee. And when I tell you how much it has quietly changed in price over the past 6 months without anyone making a big deal about it, you're going to look at it very differently the next time you put in your cart. Let's get into it. Item 1, ground beef. This one is not a secret anymore, but most people still do not understand how deep the problem goes. The USDA confirmed it. Beef and veal prices are up nearly 15% compared to April of last year. Ground beef, the kind most American families use every week, has been climbing steadily for over a year. And here is the part that makes a long-term story, not just a short-term spike. The U.S. cattle herd is at its smallest size in decades. Severe droughts across key ranching states forced ranchers to cull their herds instead of expanding them. When you kill off your herd early, it takes years to rebuild. That is not a supply problem that fixes itself by August. I looked into this myself because the prices were bothering me. You can find the USDA's own market outlook. It says the cattle herd rebuild is unlikely to produce meaningful relief before 2027 at the earliest. That is not me speculating. That is the government's own forecast. On top of the domestic shortage, the U.S.-Mexico border has been closed to live cattle imports since July 2025 because of a screwworm outbreak. The U.S. used to import over 1 million head of cattle from Mexico every single year. That pipeline is now effectively zero. What this means practically is simple. Ground beef is not going back to where it was. The window to stock up at something closer to current prices is right now, before summer demand kicks in and before retailers feel the full pressure of tighter supplies. If you have a chest freezer, use it. Buy in bulk at Costco or Sam's Club. Portion out. Freeze it. You will thank yourself in September. This is not about panic. It is about being ahead of the curve instead of reacting to it. Item 2, coffee. I want to be honest with you. I am a 2-cup-a-day person, and watching what has happened to coffee prices over the past 18 months has been genuinely painful. Coffee is up close to 20% compared to where it was a year ago. And the reasons behind that number are not going away. Brazil and Vietnam produce the majority of the world's coffee. Both countries have suffered multiple consecutive years of drought, extreme heat, and poor harvests. You cannot fix a harvest with a press release. It takes growing seasons, plural, for production to recover. And while that recovery is happening slowly, American demand for coffee is not slowing down at all. Then add tariffs. The U.S. imports essentially all of the coffee it consumes. When tariffs hit Brazilian goods last year, coffee took a direct hit. Even with some of those tariffs paused or adjusted, the base price is already elevated. The market absorbed one shock and has not fully recovered before the next one arrived. When I compared prices at my local grocery store versus what I was paying at Costco buying a 3-pound bag of whole beans, the difference was significant. Costco's price per ounce on coffee is still notably lower than buying smaller quantities elsewhere. That gap will widen as prices continue to climb. My practical advice is this. If you drink coffee, buy ahead. A sealed bag of whole beans can stay fresh for months if you store it properly in a cool, dry place. Some people freeze their beans in airtight containers, and it works very well. Buy more than you need right now, while prices are where they are. By the fourth quarter of this year, analysts are expecting another round of increases. Your morning routine should not have to cost more just because a drought happened on the other side of the world. But right now it will. So plan ahead. Item 3, olive oil. This one surprised me. Not because I did not know prices were high. I knew that. What surprised me was how many layers of pressure are hitting olive oil at the same time from completely different directions. The U.S. imports over 98% of the olive oil it consumes. Domestic production, mostly in California, covers barely 1 to 2% of demand. That means the entire American olive oil supply depends on what happens in Spain, Italy, Greece, and a few other Mediterranean countries. Spain is the world's largest producer. Over the past 2 years, severe droughts cut harvests dramatically. Italy and Greece have had their own weather-related problems. The global supply of olive oil has been genuinely tight. Now, at a 15% tariff on European food imports. That tariff applies directly to olive oil coming from Italy, Spain, and Greece. Importers are already saying that a bottle of olive oil that used to cost $10 at retail could easily reach $15. That is a 50% price increase on something most American kitchens use constantly. I spoke with someone who works in specialty food importing, and they told me flat out, the retailers are absorbing as much of this as they can, but they cannot absorb it forever. The full cost of these tariffs has not hit the shelf yet. It is coming. If you use olive oil regularly, this is the moment to buy 2 or 3 bottles instead of 1. Store them in a cool, dark cabinet. Olive oil stays fresh for 12 to 18 months if stored properly. This is a straightforward way to lock in a price that is about to get worse. You do not have to be a prepper or a hoarder to make this decision. You just have to be paying attention. And now you are. Item 4. Canned tomatoes and tomato products. Fresh tomatoes have been getting a lot of attention in the news lately, and for good reason. But I want to talk about the canned version, the diced tomatoes, crushed tomatoes, tomato paste, and Jarra marinara that sit in your pantry. Because that story is a little different, and most people are not connecting the dots yet. Mexico supplies roughly 70% of the fresh tomatoes consumed in the United States. A 17.9% tariff on Mexican tomatoes was confirmed and is now in place. At the same time, Florida, the largest domestic supplier of fresh tomatoes, saw its crops hit hard by winter freezes and storms from December through January. Supply from domestic sources is down exactly when import costs are going up. Fresh tomato prices have already spiked significantly. A package of cherry tomatoes that used to cost around $2.50 per pound could easily hit $3.50 or more. Here is the part people miss. When fresh tomatoes get expensive, the processing facilities that make canned tomatoes and tomato sauce also feel the pressure. Transportation costs are up because fuel prices are elevated due to global energy market tensions. And it has become, as one economist put it, significantly more expensive to can and process and store fruits and vegetables. Canned tomatoes are a pantry staple that keeps for 2 years. Tomato paste, crushed tomatoes, diced tomatoes, Jarra pasta sauce. All of it is going to cost more. Stock up now. Buy the store brand. Buy extra. It is one of the easiest ways to protect your grocery budget heading into fall. If a dinner that normally costs $4 ends up costing $6 because tomato prices doubled, that adds up fast over a whole year. This is a small action that pays off in a big way. Item 5, butter and dairy. Here is one that has been creeping up quietly and is about to make a lot of noise. Butter prices have been climbing steadily. The broader dairy category, milk, cheese, butter, is under pressure from multiple directions. Feed prices for dairy cows remain elevated. Fuel costs make transportation more expensive. And the same energy price surge that is hitting everything else is hitting dairy processing facilities and cold chain logistics. The USDA tracks wholesale dairy prices weekly, and what I noticed when I went through recent reports is that butter specifically has been seeing month-over-month increases that are adding up to significant year-over-year changes. Cheese prices are following a similar pattern. I started buying butter in larger quantities at Costco a few months ago because I bake a lot and the price swings were starting to bother me. I freeze butter. It freezes perfectly well for up to a year and thaws out exactly as you would expect. A lot of people do not realize this. Here is what I want you to understand about dairy. When input costs go up for farmers, feed fuel, labor, they have two options. They can absorb the loss or they can reduce production. Some smaller dairy operations are choosing to reduce production. When supply contracts while demand stays steady, prices go in one direction. Buy an extra pound or two of butter. Stock up on the block cheese you use most often. These are items with a long enough shelf life that buying ahead makes genuine financial sense. It is not dramatic. It is just smart. Item 6. Pasta and dried grains. This one is going to hit a lot of people in the wallet who are not prepared for it, and it has a very specific mechanism that I want to explain clearly. Italian pasta imports are facing a tariff situation that is genuinely extreme. The base tariff on European food imports is 15%. On top of that, the U.S. Commerce Department applied an additional anti-dumping duty of over 90% to 13 of Italy's largest pasta exporters. Combined, that is a tariff of over 100% on a significant portion of Italian pasta sold in the United States. For importers and retailers, the cost of bringing Italian pasta to American shelves could more than double. That cost does not disappear. It either comes out of the retailer's margin or it comes out of your wallet. And retailers cannot absorb 100% cost increases indefinitely. Now, most people do not buy exclusively Italian imported pasta. They buy the store brand or the Barilla boxes at Walmart. But here is what matters. When premium Italian imports become dramatically more expensive, consumers shift toward domestic brands. That increased demand on domestic brands puts upward pressure on their prices too. It is a ripple effect. Rice, lentils, dried beans, and other dry grains are in a similar situation. Global supply chain pressure, elevated shipping costs, and tariff uncertainty are all factors. These are items with an incredibly long shelf life, 2 to 5 years when stored properly. Stock up on the pasta, rice, lentils, and dried beans that your household actually uses. A few extra boxes and bags today, at today's prices, is as close to a guaranteed return as you can get in a grocery store. Item 7. Canned fish and seafood. Here it is. Number 7. And I want to tell you why this one surprised me more than any other item on this list. I have been buying canned tuna, canned salmon, and sardines the same way for years. I thought of them as the budget protein, the reliable fallback, the one category that was immune to the price swings hitting beef and chicken. I was wrong. A 15% tariff now applies to Norwegian salmon. A 10% tariff applies to fish imported from Chile and Canada. Chile and Norway supply the majority of fresh Atlantic salmon consumed in the United States. That tariff applies to the farm salmon that goes into the seafood section, and indirectly, it affects how processors and packers price their canned and packaged fish products. When I checked canned salmon prices at my local grocery store recently versus what I remembered paying 6 months ago, the increase was noticeable. Not dramatic yet, but it was there. And what I found when I looked further is that the processors have been absorbing a lot of the cost on the back end. They will not be able to keep doing that as tariffs settle in at current levels. Canned fish is one of the most nutritious and shelf-stable proteins available. Canned tuna, canned salmon, sardines, and mackerel will all keep for 3 to 5 years. This is a protein source that is getting more expensive while people are not paying attention to it because their eyes are on beef and chicken. Buy a case of canned tuna. Stock up on canned salmon. These are proteins that do not require refrigeration, last for years, and are about to cost you more. This is the category I wish I had been paying closer attention to 6 months ago. Do not let the quiet price increase catch you off guard. It is already happening. Item 8. Cooking oils. Olive oil got its own slot on this list, and it deserves it. But I want to talk about the broader cooking oil category, canola oil, sunflower oil, vegetable oil, because there are pressures here that most people have not heard about. Sunflower oil became a serious conversation topic when the war in Ukraine disrupted global sunflower seed production. Ukraine was one of the world's largest producers. The situation has not fully resolved, and global sunflower oil supply remains below pre-conflict levels. Canola oil comes significantly from Canada. The U.S.-Canada trade relationship has seen new tariff friction in 2025 and 2026. Any tariff applied to Canadian agricultural goods affects canola pricing on this side of the border. The result is that across the cooking oil category, not just olive oil, there is meaningful price pressure that is not being widely discussed. When I compare prices on the cooking oil shelf at 3 different stores near me, I notice that the larger format containers, the jugs, have seen the smallest percentage increases because stores use them as anchor products. But the medium bottles have crept up noticeably. By the large format, if you go through cooking oil regularly, vegetable oil and canola oil store well for a year or more in a cool, dark location. This is a pantry item where buying in bulk ahead of further price increases is a practical and inexpensive decision. The small savings on cooking oil add up over the course of a year. And right now, every category of that aisle is under pressure. Item 9. Frozen vegetables. Here is one that runs counter to what a lot of people assume. When fresh produce prices go up, the thinking is, I'll just switch to frozen. And that is a reasonable instinct. But the timing of that switch matters. And right now, frozen vegetables are still priced closer to where they were. Fresh vegetable prices are predicted to increase around 2 to 3% in 2026 according to the USDA, but that is the official forecast. The Iran situation has pushed energy prices up sharply. Crude oil is around $95 a barrel, and that hits cold storage and transportation costs directly. Frozen vegetables require refrigerated trucking, frozen warehouse space, and significant energy to produce and distribute. All of those costs go up when energy is expensive. The delay between energy cost increases and frozen food price increases is typically 3 to 6 months. We're in that window right now. I have been building up my freezer supply of frozen spinach, frozen broccoli, frozen corn, and frozen peas for the past few months. Not in a dramatic way, just buying an extra bag each week. These items keep for 12 to 18 months in a proper freezer. And when the price of fresh vegetables spikes, having a deep freezer stock of frozen ones is exactly the kind of buffer that protects your household budget. Stores like Aldi and Walmart still have frozen vegetables at very reasonable prices right now. That window is narrowing. Take advantage of it before summer heat and energy costs work their way through the supply chain. Item 10. Peanut butter and nut butters. This one feels almost too ordinary to mention, and that is exactly why I am mentioning it. Peanut butter has been a budget staple for so long that people take its price stability for granted. But peanuts are an agricultural commodity. They're affected by weather. They're affected by input costs. And they're affected by trade policy. Peanut butter and almond butter have both seen quiet, steady price increases over the past year. Part of this is the same energy and transportation cost pressure affecting everything else in the store. Part of it is elevated input costs, the grain, water, and energy that goes into growing and processing nuts. Part of it is consumer behavior. As beef gets more expensive, people substitute. More protein demand flows into categories like peanut butter, eggs, and canned beans. When demand for a product goes up at the same time that input costs are rising, prices respond accordingly. A jar of peanut butter keeps for a year to 18 months when stored in a cool pantry, unopened. Nut butters generally have strong shelf stability. This is a protein source, a calorie-dense food, and a staple that works in dozens of recipes. It is also an item that most families already buy regularly. Buy 2 or 3 extra jars right now. The cost difference is minimal today. But if prices continue moving the way input costs suggest they will, those jars are going to be worth more than you paid for them. Protecting your budget does not always mean making dramatic moves. Sometimes it means just buying an extra jar of peanut butter while the price still makes sense. Item 11. Avocados and Mexican produce. I want to talk about avocados specifically because they have become a cultural staple for a lot of American households. And the tariff situation with Mexico is particularly complicated. Mexico supplies 69% of all vegetable imports to the United States and over half of all fresh fruit imports. The U.S. has imposed tariffs of up to 25% on Mexican goods, with some carve-outs under existing trade agreements. But the situation is fluid and the exemptions are not guaranteed long-term. Avocados, bell peppers, limes, mangoes, cucumbers. All of these come primarily from Mexico. When I was shopping last month, I noticed avocado prices fluctuating week to week in a way that felt different from the normal seasonal variation I'm used to. A piece of fruit that used to be reliably priced at $1 or less per unit was sitting at $1.50 to $2 on certain weeks. Here's what I would tell you to do. Not stock up, because fresh avocados do not store well, but change your buying behavior. Consider buying in bulk when prices dip and freezing avocado flesh in portions for later use. Or substitute toward avocado options that are more domestically sourced, like guacamole made from California avocados when they are in season. For bell peppers, limes, and cucumbers, if you use these regularly, consider what your contingency plan is if prices spike another 20 or 30%. Which items can you substitute? Which can you grow yourself, even in a small container garden? These are the conversations families should be having right now. The tariff situation with Mexico is not resolved. It is ongoing. And produce is where most American families will feel it most directly. Item 12. Pantry staples, stock, broth, and canned beans. I want to end on something that does not get enough credit. Chicken broth, beef stock, canned black beans, canned chickpeas, canned lentils. These items sit quietly in the middle aisles of every grocery store in America. They're not glamorous. They are not trending on social media, but they are the foundation of an enormous portion of home cooking, and they are all going to cost more. Chicken broth and beef stock prices are moving because the base commodity costs are moving. When beef is up 15%, beef-based stocks and broth follow. When chicken supply faces pressure from any number of directions, feed costs, production costs, energy costs, chicken broth prices reflect that. Canned beans are in a similar situation. Legumes come from domestic and international sources, and the same transportation cost pressures that affect everything else in the store affect them too. And as more people try to substitute plant-based proteins for expensive meat, demand for canned beans is increasing while costs are rising at the same time. The good news about every single item in this final category is the shelf life. Canned beans keep for 3 to 5 years. Boxed broth and stock typically runs 12 to 24 months before the best buy date. This is the easiest possible category to stock up in. You literally cannot go wrong buying extras right now. Fill the bottom shelf of your pantry. Buy the large cans. Buy the multi-pack boxes of broth at Costco. This is the most straightforward defensive shopping you can do before prices continue to climb. When everything else gets more expensive, and it will, your pantry becomes your best financial buffer. Here is what I want you to see when you look at this entire list together. This is not 12 random problems. This is one interconnected story. Energy costs are up because of conflict in the Middle East. Cattle supply is down because of years of drought. Coffee and olive oil supply are tight because of weather damage to crops. Tariffs have added cost layers to Mexican produce, European food imports, Canadian and Norwegian seafood, and dozens of other categories. And all of those forces are hitting your grocery bill at the same time. The USDA's own forecast show grocery prices rising at or above their 20-year historical averages this year. One recent analysis put the additional tariff-related cost for the average American household at over $2,500 a year. That is real money. That is money that used to stay in your pocket. The families who will feel this the least are the ones who are acting now. Before July, before the summer price adjustments hit, before the retailers can no longer absorb the cost, and the full increase shows up on the shelf. You do not need to panic. You do not need to buy a year's supply of everything. You just need to be smarter than the average shopper. And smarter means earlier. Stock your pantry deliberately. Buy a little more of the items with long shelf lives. Use your freezer as a financial tool, not just a food storage space. Pay attention to what is happening in the supply chain before it hits the price tag. Most people will figure this out in September when the new prices are locked in and there is nothing left to do but pay them. You have the chance to figure it out now, when there is still time to do something about it. That is the whole point of this channel, and that is why I'm glad you are here. If this video helped you, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps this content reach more people who need it. Subscribe if you have not already. I do this kind of research every week, and I share it here before it becomes obvious to everyone else. Next week, I'm going to be looking at what is happening with household staples, the cleaning and personal care items that are quietly going through the same kind of price pressure as your grocery cart. You are not going to want to miss it. Take care of your family. Take care of your budget. And I will see you in the next one.